That was one of the things I started. Oh, second thing. I plan on starting, not necessarily every class, but I plan on putting some just, I don't know what to call them, like, I won't say the word sayings. How about just little nuggets about marriage, one sentence things. We started off with strong and healthy marriage begins before the I do's. I want to, if y'all wanted that one written down, you probably got it. So I'm going to change. And tonight, I'm going to put
We'll call them Neil's snippets.
oh dear.
Nihilism. We won't say words of wisdom.
My dad has a book. He calls it Bradikai.
Oh, yeah, no. I was
And it's
denying that.
full of the sayings.
Folks, marriage is not 50-50. And you hear people say this all the time. Marriage is 100-100. You've got to give, and your partner has to give 100% all the time. Now, there are going to be those days when either you don't feel like giving 100 or your partner doesn't feel like giving 100. You got to have a little grace and understanding those days. But for a marriage to work, it can't be 50-50. You've got to be giving it all you've got. Both of you. All right, let's go back and just do a quick review. We talked about the characteristics of a Christian spouse. You've got those written down in there. I asked you the question, how are you matching up to those details that you wrote down? We talked about what does dating look like? Why do you go on dates? We talked about where do you go and how some situations are better to avoid. Love versus infatuation. We talked about the difference. We talked about the opinions of others. Again, the final decision is yours, but listen to folks because sometimes they see things you don't. And then, look at maybe someone in a different light to see if you see what they're seeing. I told you tonight we're fixing to hit the hard one. Intimacy in dating. Now, this isn't going to be nearly as hard as when we get into marriage and we have to hit this. But there's a couple of questions that I want us to answer. I want you to think about. First one, just what is acceptable? Spiritually, socially, what's acceptable in dating? The floor is not going to have the answer.
Holding hands.
Holding hands. I knew somebody would say that. I got to share this. 1960s. Lipscomb. Young couple. For those who haven't been to Lipscomb campus, there are swings that are set up throughout campus under some of those nice trees where you sit down and study or whatever. So there's a young couple and they're sitting there and all they're doing is holding hands. I mean, quite literally. He's bumped up against the arm rest on this side. She's bumped up against the arm rest on that side. And they're holding hands. One of the older custodians that was going across campus, who was also a preacher at the time, he stopped and looked at him. He said, I want to ask you something. What are you saving for marriage? We're not quite that strict. Folks, there was a time, things were just different. Folks had a different outlook on things. And I think we've progressed, rightly so, on some things. Not all change has been good. So holding hands. We all good with that, I think? Anybody disagree with that one? That one's okay? just looking for ideas.
I think it's different for everybody.
Okay, keep going. You've intrigued me.
Like, even some people, like, from the Church of Christ, I've known that have gone their entire dating relationship and not even kissed because they felt like that was right for them.
Okay, right. But then I'm saying, can we do this and not be in violation of Scripture or your conscience? Now, what she just said, if your conscience is being violated, then you need to watch that. Absolutely. What else? Because that's going to lead into the next one, obviously.
Kissing.
Okay. That's definitely socially acceptable. Expected. We're not going to get into, how many dates do you go and yada, yada, yada. Not going there. You guys still hug? I mean, you would hug your girlfriend a little bit different than you would somebody else. For example, most of the time, if I'm going to hug any of you, other than the guys, but you'll notice I'll probably get to the side and hug you from the side. Just because that's the way I do things. But if I'm going to hug my wife, I'm not going to hug her from the side. What else? Y'all ever flirt? Huh? Try to make the other one laugh? Things like that? What is the idea of all this stuff? Obviously, holding hands is showing affection. Kissing someone, showing affection. But what about the conversations that you have and trying to make them laugh? And what's all that about?
Make them feel special.
Okay. Actually, that's a type of intimacy. But we're only thinking about physical intimacy. What about spiritual intimacy? What kinds of things could you do while you were dating to show them that you have a desire to, and I have to be careful about how I use the word intimate. You want to be more than just friends spiritually. Oh, now we're getting there. Studying together. What else? You better be doing this for people you're dating.
Right.
Praying. Absolutely. We forget about these things. I forgot about when I didn't pray for my girlfriend when I was dating. I did that one. But probably not. Well, yeah. Probably all along there. I mean, because we became acquaintances and friends long before we started dating. And we went to the student center down at Awesome P, so we spent times in devos together and things like that. So it became a habit of us praying for one another. But before that, I really didn't pray. For that person, I did pray that God would send me the right person, that I would be able to find the right person that would be right for each other, but really didn't do it enough.
Pray for, but pray with, too.
Absolutely.
Being vulnerable spiritually, talk about what you struggle with, talk about what you're good at.
And that's going to become even more important when we get into the marriage. That is something that we have to really look into. I hope you see where I'm going here. When we think about dating, we think about, okay, there's certain limits of what I can do in the physical and social realm. I can't go past these limits. But apparently we put them on our spiritual level as well, when it's never wrong to pray for someone. It's never wrong to study with someone. It's never wrong to say, hey, I'm hurting too. Or, I need a shoulder cry. That's what the church is for. And if this is someone that you're planning on being even more close to than just a brother or sister in Christ, then you definitely need to develop that type of relationship. I'm going to tell you right now, they're hard. And ladies, I'm going to tell you, and you probably already know it, but guys have a real tough time. Real tough time. Talking about feelings. Real tough time opening up and letting you know that we're hurting or we failed. We're bad about that. Because, see, we don't understand what being the spiritual leader is, and we're going to talk about that when we get further into marriage. We think it means I can never mess up, and I can't ever let my guard down. I can't let anybody ever see that I'm vulnerable, that I'm not perfect, that I make mistakes. That's not going to work. We'll talk more about that when we get into the actual marriage. I'll share some things with you. Things that I have not done a good job at. So you can learn from my bad example. You ever heard in school there are non-examples? I probably have more of those than I have examples. All right, so let's talk about scripturally, when we think about the physical relationship, how far is too far? Somebody go to Hebrews 13, verse 4. Let's just get this one out of the way first. Might want to jot this one down and out beside it, write down what this goes to. Hebrews 13 and 4. Remember, when you're reading, tell which version you're in. Hebrews 13
I'm in New King James.
and verse 4. You going to read it for us?
Marriage is honorable among all, and the bed undefiled, but fornicators. Oh, just a second. Almost, sorry. Something just popped up.
Fornicators and adulteresses, God, or adulterers, God will judge. Somebody give me a ESV or different. Who's got something different?
ESV says, "Let marriage be held in honor among all, and let the marriage bed be undefiled, for God will judge the sexually immoral and adulterous."
Okay. Does it get any plainer than that? Fornication is not a word that we use. We don't use it because people have stopped using it because it kind of has a harsh tone to it. It was meant to have a harsh tone to it. It was meant to insult you when you hear it. It was meant to elicit a response, an emotional response was, I don't want to be, you better not call me that, I don't want to be involved in it. That's what it was meant. You're sexually immoral.
Yeah.
Okay? That covers a lot of things. Again, we're not going to get into that. And then he talks about adultery. What's the difference between fornication and adultery? Do we know?
Adultery is like cheating.
Cheating because you are married. Fornication is sex outside of marriage. And we'll come back to this, that the marriage bed is undefiled. We'll come back to that when we get into talking about marriage. But outside that marriage bed, you can't do that. Period. So, somebody go to Matthew 5, 27 28. Matthew 5, 27 28.
I'm reading ESV. You have heard that it was said, "You shall not commit adultery." But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her.
Where am I going with that? We've established biblically, and we didn't even have to, biblically. Most folks understand having sex outside of marriage is not the way to go. They might not say it's wrong, but they would suggest you don't do it, especially for young folks. Although today it's becoming less and less and less stringent. It's more do what you want, when you want, how you want. But Jesus says even if you look at somebody can do what? Lust.
Have lust in your eyes.
Can I have your permission to be crude and quote what I heard a high school student tell me one time? Everybody good? I'm not going to cuss, obviously, but it's crude. So I'm talking to the young man, and his buddy or somebody says something about a certain girl, and he said this, I got to get me some of that. Well, he's already committed it. His mind's already there. It's already a sinful act. The point is, how far is too far? If I get to the point that I start having my partner, my date, whatever you want to call this person, if I start having them have impure thoughts. You with me? However, we have some folks who take that too far. Most of us have the self-control to be able to look at somebody and think, they're a really pretty girl. They're a very handsome man. And not think about those other things. Jesus didn't say you can't look at other folks and you can't appreciate them for who they are. He never said that. He said, when your mind is in the gutter and all you're thinking about is what can I do to cause this person to want to sleep with me, that's when you got a problem. Because there is nothing, other than hearing your name, there's nothing that is more important to folks or makes them feel any better than a genuine and sincere compliment. You can make somebody's day. But there's two words that I've used. Genuine and sincere. You can't just make something up so you can say something to them and try to make them feel better. A genuine, sincere compliment. That's even more important toward the person that you're dating. Genuine, sincere compliment. And ladies, if you have picked up on it, sometimes guys' face, it'll give you the compliment. You know, our jaw drops when you come out and we're going out and you've got your hair done and you just wearing that outfit that just, I'm not talking about an inappropriate outfit. We just look at you like, how is she going out with me? Sometimes our faces say it. Guys, that's not enough. She needs to hear it. She needs to hear it. If she spent whatever time and her hair is extra special that night, then tell her. It looks great. That looks amazing. Ladies, guys kind of like to hear that too. Genuine and sincere. All right, so definitely you can't have sex outside of marriage. You need to stay out of situations where your mind goes places it doesn't belong. That's too far. Somebody go to 1 Corinthians 6 and verse 18.
Chapter 6, verse what?
18, I think. 18. 1 Corinthians 6, 18. You're
Read it. I got New King James.
okay.
Flee sexual immorality. Every sin that a man does is outside the body, but he who commits sexual immorality sins against his own body.
Flee. We don't use that word. ESV uses what? ESV uses flee. I got the Christian Standard Bible.
Is it run?
No, just run.
It's always interesting around our house. You okay, Sid? Imagine sitting there watching TV about halfway asleep and, you know, or she sneezes.
Ask Clinton about sharks.
Oh my goodness, you're wrong. You're wrong. Ha. Flee from it, run from it. Run from any situation that is going to make you have impure thoughts. Occasionally we would take teams and we would go to work. You wear a swimsuit, but you wear shorts, and you wear something other than a see-through shirt over top. Guys, shorts, something other than a see-through t-shirt on the top. And the guys couldn't understand. Why can't we take our shirts off? Why can't we take our shirts off? Why has that been okay all along? I don't understand the female mind the way you ladies do, but if you're attracted to our physical features, the way we're attracted to your physical features, why would it be okay for us to go around flaunting what we've got, but to tell you it's wrong for you to do the same? You need to cover up. I can show everything I've got, but you need to cover up. Guys, do you see where that don't track? And we've never thought about it. We don't think about that. Well, it's just society says it's okay for us to play shirts and skins when we're playing basketball. I mean, we just skin off when we go to the beach or whatever. Run it by you again. If females are attracted to males by our physical features, what are we doing to them? I don't think there's anybody in here that would say it'd be okay for a female to go topless. Why is it okay for a guy to? Gracie, you're either really thinking hard or you got a headache.
I don't know.
But we've been taught by society, oh, it's okay, it's okay. Why is it okay? Think about that. Where are we at? Let's see. Let's do Colossians 3 and verse 5.
I got the ESV. It says, "Put to death, therefore, what is earthly in you: sexual immorality, impurity, passion, evil desire, and covetousness, which is idolatry."
Put it to death. We would put that a different way. Somebody help me out. Because sensitive things now, we can't say put something to death. What would we say? Get it out of your mind. Put it out of your mind. Don't even entertain the thought. You're in a situation and you start entertaining those thoughts. Well, we just read the passage tells us what to do. What was it again, Diana?
Run!
Get out of there. Get away from the situation. Did she do it to you again? Oh, you read that. Get away from it. And we'll explain the meaning behind that in just a minute. Put it out of your mind. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. This is a long one. Better if it was Thessalonians. So let's just make it clear. Somebody read verse. This keeps going. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. And let's look at verses. Let's do 3 through 5. Who had read?
I'll read.
All right.
For this is the will of God, your sanctification, that you should abstain from sexual immorality, that each of you should know how to possess his own vessel in sanctification and honor, not in passion of lust, like the Gentiles who do not know God.
What's it talking about here? What does sanctification mean? To be sanctified.
Set apart.
Set apart for a purpose. And generally it is for a specific and honorable purpose. Would that describe us as Christians? We're set apart, we're supposed to be set apart from the world for a specific purpose, to live our life after Christ. What's this talking about? What word would we use that Paul is talking to Thessalonians about? Self-control. Self-control. That's in a lot of different things. Now here it is literally talking about the things that we're talking about, going too far and doing things you shouldn't do as far as sexuality goes. But when you think about self-control, that covers a lot of things. That mouth, the way you treat people in business, you're allowing yourself to be controlled by some substance. You know, right down to the point. I mean, a lot of us won't think about it, but some of us are addicted to caffeine. Can't make it without it. Sugar. I didn't even shoot it, lace it up, and wear it. And when I talk about addiction, I'm talking about the point where it rules your life. You have to have it. Self-control. Let's read a little further. Let's see. We went through 5, correct? Let's do 6 through 8. Get yourself in self-control. Make sure you have self-control. Why? Verses 6 through 8.
That no one transgress and wrong his brother in this matter, because the Lord is no measure in all these things we are told you beforehand. And solemnly warn you, for God has not called us for impurity, but in holiness. Therefore, whoever disregards not man, but God, and gives His Holy Spirit to you.
Do not defraud one another. Now, some versions will say this matter. Some of the older text will say in any manner. Obviously, this is talking about a specific thing. Folks, it's about having self-control. It's about realizing you're sanctified. You're set apart for a special purpose. If you look like the rest of the world, you're not set apart. If you act like the rest of the world, it's not special purpose. Let's do one more. James 1, 13 through 16. Let's make this part 8. Because I think sometimes this is misrepresented.
There's what?
James chapter 1.
13 through 16.
I think it's 13 through 16.
13 through 13. Let no one say when he is tempted, I am being tempted by God. For God cannot be tempted with evil, and he himself tempts no one. But each person is tempted when he is lured and enticed by his own desire. Then desire, when it has been conceived, gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is fully
think he bookends it one more time, doesn't he?
Do not be deceived, my beloved brothers.
His bookend. Don't let yourself be fooled. Then he explains something. He says, don't let yourself be fooled. I think it's kind of important to listen to what he just said. I've already said this, but I need you to understand it. Is the temptation sin? No. Christ himself was tempted. It's when you give in to the temptation. I was talking to a person one time, and she said, well, if you think it, you should just go on and say it, because you've already said it in your heart. And I'm like, no, that's not.
That's where the self-control comes in.
That's where the self-control comes in. I want you to raise your hand if you've never had a thought to go through your mind that you, as when it rushed through there, you're like, oh, no, I wouldn't, no, that's just, no, I can't do that. Y'all remember what I did before I came here? Assistant principal. Just let me set the situation up.
I ain't gonna tell them which one.
Parents in the office, you know, telling you all kinds of things. And you don't know how many times. And I did not act on it any time. But you don't know how many times it went through my head. Somebody will just smack you. Somebody will just smack you. They come in and cuss a blue streak saying, my kid knows better than talk like that. No, they don't. Because the example that you gave them is that this is normal and this is the way adults talk, so I want to be like an adult, so I want to talk like you. Somebody just needs to smack you. I'd say there's been times in my life when I've been talking to people, they probably thought that about me too. An old preacher told me one time, he said, when it comes to thoughts, he said, let me make it this analogy for you. He says, you can't keep a bird from flying over your head. But you sure can keep it from landing on your head and making a nest in your hair. That's those thoughts. If they go through there and they don't need to be in there, put them out of your mind. Get rid of them. If you can't get rid of them standing where you're standing, get out of that situation, go somewhere else. The temptation is not a sin, and every one of you will be tempted multiple times in your life, and what you're tempted with may not be what I'm tempted with. But the temptation is not a sin. It's when we give into it. Make sense? So what I'm trying to say to you, sometimes maybe a thought when you're dating goes through your mind that shouldn't be there. Get rid of it. And if you're somewhere where this could be turned into something that could become a problem, get out of that situation, go somewhere else. It may be time to end the date that night. I told you all along, this is not easy. This is not easy. Questions, comments? It's 10 after. What do we go to? 12 after? Is it 15 after? Yeah. We might stop at 12 after. I won't look at something before I get up to speak tonight. All right, well, let's go to the next one that I want to talk about. Who is eligible to marry? Who is eligible to marry?
Anyone who's not already married?
Okay. That would be single people. Unwed, single people have the right to get married. Absolutely. And the best example of that is the very beginning, Adam and Eve. Got two single people. Oh, by the way, I'm slow. Y'all probably already thought about this. But have you thought about what Adam says? That the man shall leave his father and mother and cleaved to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. Have you ever thought about that they were already physically one flesh? Eve came from him. Adam was made from the dust of the ground. Eve came from Adam. She literally was his flesh. And he says it. This is bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. They literally, in every way, were one flesh. First time someone got married. And then he made the statement. Well, we don't physically, literally become the same flesh. I mean, most places frown upon you being like that closely related and getting married. But, you know. Emotionally, socially, spiritually, become one flesh. And the idea there is you're one in one purpose. You're still two individual people. God, Christ, Holy Spirit are three individuals, but they are one. We'll talk about that more later. All right, so absolutely, those who are single. Book of Ruth is about what kind of lady?
A woman who is married and her husband died.
What do we call those?
Widows.
Widows. First thing you should be thinking, wait a minute, we've talked about this back here before. We're not under the old law. You're right, you're not under the old law. But this is an example of a woman who was widowed who could get remarried. And in the New Testament, the church is strictly warned not to start taking too much care of young widows, but let them remarry. I mean, the Bible gives you that option if you want to. But they're eligible. A widow or widower. What's a widower? The man who's lost his wife. Right. They can get remarried. Spiritually, scripturally, everything's good. Now this next one's going to cause discussion. But we're not going into deep because we don't have time. Divorce. In Matthew 5 and Luke 16, Jesus both gave an exception for divorce, what it could be, and that you could get remarried. And that's adultery. If the person is caught in adultery, let's go there. Let's look at Luke's account. Luke 16:18, and then we'll finish up the last one. Luke 16:18. Who's got it?
Got it. Whoever divorces his wife and marries another commits adultery, and whoever marries her who is divorced from her husband commits adultery.
Now to clarify that, back up to Matthew 5. Matthew 5 bring anything to anybody's recollection? Do what now? Yeah. Sermon on the Mount. It's about verse 31. Yes. Furthermore, it's been said, whoever divorces his wife, let him give her a certificate of divorce. But I, Jesus, say to you that whoever divorces his wife for any reason except sexual immorality causes her to commit adultery, and whoever marries a woman who is divorced commits adultery. Adultery is your one out. But does it say you have to divorce them? No. There are those who have worked it out and made it through. Last one. Last one. Who's eligible to get married? A man and a woman. Back to Genesis 2. A man and a woman. husband and wife. Nowhere is in the Bible you're going to find two husbands married to one another, or two wives married to one another. Scripturally, a man and a woman. Next week, we're going to start getting into why. Why are we doing this study? I want to share some statistics with you. I want to share some things that other folks have shared with me about marriage, and then we're going to start getting into a lot of the things that you guys have asked for. Anybody wants to write a question out?